So there's, first of all, I didn't put it on here, but they changed how we should do things here because of COVID, the second wave and everything. So we've been told that as far as signing stuff, the best thing to do is for us to bring, when you know where the phone is downstairs, when you come in that way, they don't want anyone else coming into the office. So we have to bring it to you. So when you come in, we're gonna have to bring the paperwork down, at least for the time being, until Mike tells us different, and have you there is a table down there, I think, sit at the table and sign what we reviewed today.
You're talking about near where the bathrooms are, right?
Yes, yep, because
All the official work is done outside the bathroom now.
There you go.
Well, there's some pretty bad stuff that happens in that bathroom if you ask Brenda too. And we've seen pictures. It's not pretty. So that's at least, they talked about, well, we could do it in the gym. There's nowhere to actually sit in the gym. We had our last staff meeting in there. We're all standing up around the bleachers. And even if we did that, had a meeting in there, we would still have to televise it. So as far as signing things goes, and actually when people come into all the offices now, we all have to put our masks on. I don't have mine on now. I'm pretty far away from Tammy. But when anyone comes in, and it has to be like a 15, even if someone that works on the first floor comes in, they can only be in here a very few minutes at this point. So that's the protocol now that we've been told until vaccines and everything start happening quicker. They're not changing anything with us closing, or working from home or anything like that. Although all the computers are now being set up here with docking stations. We've got a whole pile of peripherals sitting there waiting to be hooked up. They're going office to office, hooking these things up so we can take the laptops with us. So I'm curious to see how that's going to work. I hope it actually does work. So we'll get into it now. So you have motor vehicle abatement applications that Tammy has ready for you to review and sign. There's only 2 exemption applications that have come in. Hi, Pat.
Hey,
How are you?
I'm good.
There's only 2 exemption applications that have come in, and I already reviewed them, and they're the 2 same ones from last year, so they're qualifying ones. So really, all you have to do is sign those 3. There's still a couple that are outstanding that we're going to call. They have until April 1st, but I think they may have forgotten. With everything going on, it's easy to. We have the personal property, the big notice that you guys usually sign that we post. I've got those typed up so you can sign 2 copies of those, and we'll post those on the bulletin board. Number 4, all my sales changes, all the deeds are in from last year, so I can start making and there's a lot of them. There's more than we've ever had. I'll make those changes on the system, and that, along with the maps, item number 5, will go out probably in I would say maybe first or second week in February. And the mapping company, there's not a lot of plans to change. There's maybe three or 4 that came through. So they'll handle that. Form of lists are going to be mailed out next week, because we have to have those out by February 1st. The 3 ABC forms, these are both due, as you know, March 1st. So those are going to go out as well. I know we're flying through this, but a lot of this stuff is just, same things that we go over at the beginning of every year. The FY22 budget and 504 utility valuations, we haven't gotten the budget papers yet, which I asked Mike about, and I'm sure they're going to be coming out soon. But usually we have them in by, Christmas. So I don't know if they're just late or they're trying something different. So when that comes through, I'll notify you guys. The 504 utility valuations, that's something that we talked about before, where the town is responsible for valuing the utilities. So that would be Berkshire Gas, Western Mass, National Grid, I think those, or Eversource. Those are the ones that we have. That's a mandate this year. Last year it was voluntary, but the state is mandating it now as part of the fiscal 22. And actually assessors are freaking out because nobody knows how to do it. And it's possible that we might have to budget to have an outside firm do that. But we're trying to avoid that because I'm on the Berkshire County Assessors Association now, and they kind of volunteered me to help out with a spreadsheet that all assessors in different communities could use to try to value themselves. And I haven't even had a chance to look at the preliminary data that's come in, because there's a manual that you have to subscribe to every year, and it's like $800 to $900 that has all these line items in it. Because what happens is, let's say Berkshire Gas is now going to submit a form of list completely different than what it ever used to look like. So what it's going to look like now is pages and pages and pages of everything itemized, instead of just a net book value that they used to send us every year. We have to take all those items and go to this manual, kind of like Marshall and Swift, except it's more expensive. And we actually have to value every single item. It's a 50-50. You take 50% of their value, you use 50% of, and there's a depreciation that goes into it too. And most assessors, I don't even know if the small towns are aware that they're responsible for doing this. It's kind of like when we had to do the cell wireless companies, and everyone had to hire someone. Well, we do it in-house because we figured it out. So I'm sure this is something we can do because it's expensive. If not, we're going to have to look into budgeting for it. But I'm doing everything in my power to see if we can do it locally on our own through our association, and then distribute it to everyone, and kind of give them a little course on how to do this. And we might for the fall, or not the fall meeting, this first spring meeting that we have, which will be a Zoom meeting, we could actually focus on just having the subject matter be, how do you value a 504 and how do you do it in-house? Because if people think that they don't have to do it this year, they need to check with the state, because it's a mandate. You're not going to get your tax rate set unless either the town is budgeted for this to have a private appraiser do it, which RRC, our personal property company, has already sent me a quote for that. And I think they've put it out to everybody. But again, we kind of want to avoid that if we can. I've looked at a few of the line items. It doesn't look that difficult, but who knows what would be acceptable at this point with the state. I know our association is looking into maybe trying to get the utility companies to actually police themselves and do this for us, which would make it a lot easier for everyone. The whole thing is are we going to trust what they put down on the form of list? And that might be the thing, is the state might come back and say, what did you use for evaluation method? And if we say, well, we just took what Berkshire Gas gave us, they might come back and say, well, you still don't know if that's the full market value for that personal property item. That might be an issue. Our local assessors on this group, which I said I'm involved now, we're all looking into that, meeting with the DOR, seeing if that's something that would be acceptable. Maybe not for this year, but maybe for the years going forward. And also, again, this is something that can be contested at the appellate tax board. Even though we won, the state won the case where they were confident going forward that the assessors can value these themselves, we still could have liability going forward with an appellate tax board case, because we're valuing these things on our own instead of the Department of Revenue valuing them for us. That's neither here nor there, because that could be way in the future. It takes years for these cases to be heard. But I just want to make you guys aware that because we're going into budgeting season, if we can't figure out this spreadsheet, it's possible that at least for the first year, we may have to put in a special article or see if there's funds available, because this is something serious. This isn't just, well, worry about it in the fall. We have to tackle it now because we haven't nailed down how this is going to be done. And we're frantically working on it with the Berkshire County assessors to see if we can do it ourselves. But if not, I wanted you to know that going forward, it could be a budgeting issue or, thing that we have to look into. Number 9, the Residential Exemption Committee. Remember way back in the fall, I know it seems like forever with everything going on, that we were going to put together a committee to investigate the residential exemption and talk to the communities that are using it, how they're in implementing it into their tax billing system if they have soft rate like we have, and what the issues have been, if there have been any issues. So I know I've heard from Georgia Marsden. She was interested in being on the committee, and obviously I'll be on it. I just don't know how many, you don't want to have too many people involved because there is, with COVID and everything, we're still going to have all of our meetings, through Zoom one way or another. Maybe things will change, but this is something we have to tackle now. Again, not something in the fall. So what do you guys think about that? How many people do you think should be on there?
Well, I think there should be at least one assessor. Maybe, hold on, we got another call coming in. You there? All right, one assessor, maybe one select person, and 1 or 2 more townspeople would be my input.
Yeah,
Are you okay with Georgia?
I'm fine. Yeah.
fine with me.
Okay.
You should probably get a second homeowner at least.
Oh, that's true.
And,
Yeah.
and Gary, would you do it for the assessors, or would you want someone else to do it?
Well, when are you thinking, Mike?
Probably something either in February or March.
Yeah,
Maybe because we still have abatements, maybe end of February, beginning of March sometime.
Michael, when do you think the analysis of residents versus non-resident parcels is going to occur?
What do you mean analysis?
Well, I mean, we don't know the counts yet, do we? The exact counts of resident occupied parcels or buildings versus non-resident. And I think that some of the work of this committee should be an evaluation of what our best guess is that of what the breakdown would be, because it's going to impact what the rates are.
I can come up with something that's very rough, even at this point.
Okay.
Typically I wait until the deeds are in because they're, like I said, we're dealing with a situation that's a little bit different this time because of the mass number of people that have bought property here that still might have their other home somewhere else where they kind of escaped here. I don't like using that word, but let's just, that they came here and now they're living here and they have a PO box, but it doesn't necessarily mean that they close shop on their other home. So I've made a note on those deeds that, at least for our reference, because typically once I do the deed changes, my next step is to go into the personal property and actually pick up each account. So I'll go through the deed and I'll look and say, okay, it looks like their mailing address is Philadelphia or Boca Raton or whatever. Right. And then I'll pick them up, and that'll be as of January 1, that'll be a new account. But there's so many people that have opened up PO boxes and purchased property here that it doesn't necessarily mean that they are no longer second homeowners. I've made a note that says, leave on personal property until we can check this out. And I don't know what the best method of, other than maybe sending a questionnaire to these select taxpayers and saying, again, they don't have to answer this, but it would be nice to know that, are you a permanent resident here, or is this something that's temporary until things, aren't so bad, and then you move back, cancel your PO box, and now you have a second home here, but you're still, got your main residence back in another state. So, there's not a ton of those. There may be maybe 20 or less, that we can just put in the category of, that these are the ones that are iffy at this point. But I can come up with a pretty good number once the deeds are in. So I'm saying maybe by mid-February, I could have a good idea of what the breakdown is between the two.
And I think also if you looked at just voter registration, just in the last 12 to 24 months, that would give you an indication of folks we know we can confirm are residents, because if someone's re-registered to vote here, they are by definition a resident.
Right. I'm going to have Tammy work on that as a project for her to, because she's also now pretty familiar, because she helps out with Terry in her office. So, I mean, that it'll be a joint effort I can come up with the initial review from my system, because, I work with it all the time. I can do that initial printout and just because she's seen this before, and actually say, okay, let's do two different things right at the moment. Let's just go through and come up with a list of the ones we know we can confirm. And then we'll keep a separate list where we can check voter registration on those iffy ones. And then we'll have a pretty good idea going into the committee and going into the spring where we sit with it. And I think that's what you were referencing.
Yeah.
So-
Okay. Thank you.
So
So,
my
back
question-
to your question. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Well, yeah, so my real question is, so what are the rules? So the rule is what makes a resident? Is it voter registration? Is it where you file your taxes? I mean, because we gotta get it well defined. So,
That's a whole other thing. I mean, how are we, typically I would say, and from what I've heard from, grumblings at the DOR, it's where you file your taxes.
Yeah.
right.
And if that's the case, who's going to give up their taxes for us? I mean, I guess if you want to get this exemption, if it were to be voted through, you would have to prove it one way or another. But again, things are so tight in the fall when we're trying to get tax bills out, that's going to be something that, has to be nailed down with what procedures are we going to use to determine whether or not, if this goes through, you're going to receive it. And if you truly are meant to receive it or want to receive it. So, I mean,
And so what you really should do is that you should almost make an assumption that everybody is a second. And if it goes back to being registered voters, everybody should be a secondary homeowner unless they're on our voter registration rolls, which is going to cause a complete nightmare, because I have a feeling that there's probably people who have not registered to vote who are true residents. So we really need to define, what we're using to define what a secondary residence is.
right. And I think that goes back to speaking to the communities that have been doing this for years. What was their initial, I mean, we can get that idea from this office of, okay, let's say there's 600 versus 700. We can get that nailed down I could literally run that in a day. But we definitely have to talk to those Cape towns where they've done this, and it's like, where did you start? Where is the jump off point? And did you do some type of questionnaire? If there's a form that you use where you recommend verification of domicile, I mean, I have a feeling that's probably what they do. And if that's something that we have to do, that could be an added expense for having to send those out. I mean, those are the types of things that I think with an agenda for maybe the first meeting that we have, we definitely have to start, assigning, phone calls to someone to say, okay, we called Belchertown or wherever, and this is how they do it, and just get a file ready. And again, there's also the side of, we have to speak with the software vendors to make sure they can, that they've been implementing this in other communities. So it's a huge endeavor, but I think what Patrick says, that I can do that initial setup, I can get that idea. And Doug, on your side, we definitely have to find out how they're doing this in other communities, because I will say I don't know the procedure. I mean, for me, this is new. So
So
yeah.
I have just a couple questions here. First of all, I agree that second homeowners should be on it, and we ought to be carefully considering who's on this committee. I also had a sense from our earlier discussion, we felt skeptical about whether we wanted to be getting involved with residential exemptions. Is my recollection correct or not?
About what, Tom?
About a sense of skepticism among the board of assessors, whether that this was really a good idea for Stockbridge.
Yeah, I mean, I'm skeptical that we might be alienate our secondary homeowners, and I think they do a lot for the community. So I'm not convinced that this is a great idea, but I think if, we should be looking into it if that's what the townspeople want.
Yeah. I think you
I
only,
go ahead, Pat.
I think you only need to look into this as far as we can bring the right information to town meeting. Even though the select board, it's my understanding, has the right to implement a residential exemption, I would not support a residential exemption unless at town meeting, the voters approve this idea. And I think that's going to really rest on, it doesn't have to be 35%. If you could do 7% a year and use some of that funds to fund, capital projects, long-term investments in infrastructure in the town, like the high school, like dredging, like sewer, like the bridges we have out. That's really the thing I'm focused on, is how do we pay for those things in a way that doesn't burden the modest people of modest means in town. But if the town thinks this is a bad idea, Doug, I absolutely would not support it. So I think that this committee only needs to do enough work to bring the right information to town meetings, so we're dealing with facts as voters weigh in as to what we should do in this front.
Patrick,
So,
are you willing to be on the committee?
I'm very sympathetic, certainly, to Patrick's concerns. But one concern that I would have is if, in fact, residents only comprise of 50% of our tax base of residential homes.
It's less than that.
I know it's less than that. Is it really fair for this vote to be decided by voters?
The minorities are,
And
yeah.
Well, look at, we're in a weird,
Yeah,
we're in
go
a
ahead.
weird position where unfortunately the only way we can give relief to people who can't afford to pay more to get things built is the residential exemption. That's the only mechanism the state gives us.
excuse me, that's not the only way. We have a special fund in Stockbridge to give people, and people contribute to that fund. We do have a system to give people relief.
The elderly fund.
Yes.
Yes.
No, I understand that. The only thing that can impact everyone. Look, I don't want to argue the merits of it now, but I do think that, to the point of town meeting, it's the fact that this is a weird town and that the majority of a home ownership is not residents, but I don't see how democracy works any other way than town meeting. And I certainly don't want to, I support this, but I certainly don't want my opinion and my position to carry the day just because of that. I think we should bring it to the town and have the town weigh in and then make our best decision.
Well, if that's the case, and I guess I'll start out by saying that I agree with Tom and Doug in that I'm highly skeptical of pursuing this avenue, because I just think it puts an unfair burden on people that already support us and don't receive any measure of the benefit, I guess, from their taxes versus year-round residents. And I would be more in favor of putting the question to town meeting first to see if there is a appetite for that versus spending a lot of time going after something that perhaps is not even achievable, I guess I would say.
I agree with you, Gary, and I think maybe this committee should be tasked with just generating enough information to, to provide something at the town meeting for a vote. So in other words, I guess going back to what everybody is saying, that I think we just need to scale back the work and try to give a big generalization or some facts to the town for town meeting, and then have a little vote to see if this is something that we even want to create a committee to do more work on. So I think we got to gather a little bit of information about who uses it, how they currently use it, and what it has done for the town in other areas in Stockbridge, and not spend a lot of time on it until the townspeople say.
So in that vein, I would say that I'm not sure we even need a committee yet then. I would think that maybe that's something that at least Mike could reach out to maybe 2 or 3 communities that do it, and let's hear what they say first.
Yeah, and I think when you reach out to second homeowners, I would suggest a Zoom. You'll find, believe me, I haven't brought this up in secret. I've talked to at least 15 or 20 second homeowners, and the majority support having the town invest in the infrastructure that it needs without penalizing the folks, who maybe can't afford to do that. Many second homeowners, we're not talking about a huge change in their tax rate because most of the taxes are paid by second homeowners. And yet what people are frustrated by is the potential of not dredging the bowl. They're frustrated by the lack of the bridges, and they're frustrated by not having garbage issue, at the transfer station on Sunday. They want services more than they want to save a couple points on their tax rate. Don't assume that just because, we're making taxes more progressive, that folks who can afford to pay them are going to be against this.
Right. But I guess I would say too, I mean, if you want to have the transfer station open on Sunday, then maybe don't have it open on Wednesday.
Yeah.
I mean, I think there's alternatives to, well, there's always alternatives to everything, but I'm just saying, I don't know if we have to go to great lengths to try to come up with another bureaucratic solution if we can in fact just fix things through common sense.
Well, I just don't, personally, I don't know that, what I'm worried about, Gary, is just the appetite. Stockbridge's share of the school is going to be $15 million. Dredging will cost the town $2 million. We're going to even do a sewer expansion. That's going to cost the town $3 to $5 million.
Yeah. No, I get that, Pat.
The appetite for these kinds of projects, which I think the town desperately needs, may not be there at future town meetings if we can't do a little bit of at least level funding of taxes for the people who can't afford to pay an increase. That's all my fear is. I don't want to
So Patrick, just for what it's worth, I, for one, have a lot of skepticism about dredging the bowl and expanding the sewer system. I think there are alternatives to both, and I, for one, would be greatly against spending a lot of money on those two projects. So I fundamentally disagree with you in your assessment that these are critically needed things, capital expenditures.
Okay.
So I think we should just go back and take a step back and maybe ask the assessor's office to reach out to a few of the towns that have implemented this to see what information they could provide us that might be great to educate our local people. And based on that research, we can discuss it again about next steps. And so I think it might be.
I think that's a great idea, Doug. And then I think I would go so far as to say, then maybe we would ask the select board or Mike if there isn't some kind of a very short survey that we could do an online survey to our second homeowners, and maybe even perhaps maybe town-wide, where you just ask 3 to 5 questions and
I think I think having that type of survey sent to all taxpayers prior to town meeting would give the townspeople more information that they currently don't have. Like Gary, you were saying you feel a certain way, and Patrick's saying that the secondary homeowners feel a different way.
Sure.
If there was a survey sent to every taxpayer that discussed this might give the people actually voting in May, if it comes to a vote in May, to have a little bit more information if the secondary homeowners have the ability to participate in the feedback.
Yeah, I think that that's definitely the case. And, you know, you can tell just from the few of us that, you know, we have a wide ranging opinion, including the fact that, you know, Patrick, you mentioned that, you know, we're going to pay a large portion of the school. And I mean, I still go back to the vote that was taken at the town meeting where I feel like we were sold a little bit of an emotional bill of goods when we took on the added responsibility of Great Barrington in the
Yeah.
school.
Yeah, I agree, but I think we have to be careful about tying any of our actions to any specific projects.
Oh, I agree.
And so, you
I
know,
agree with that too. Yeah.
yeah, we really shouldn't be talking about what the money's being spent for. We really just have to talk about
Well,
how.
I think we have to just stay mindful that it's the concept.
Yes, I agree. Let's big picture. Don't talk about projects. Don't talk
Yeah.
about how it's spent. It's really about
agree.
how we want to collect taxes and what's fair and equitable. And again, I'm trying to protect the secondary homeowners. I think we all are trying to protect the secondary homeowners, but maybe like Patrick's saying, they are not needing to be protected. And we
Well,
would.
and that's where I think that surprises me, I guess I would say, because any meeting that I've had with the planning board, they seem very concerned about the fact that they pay taxes and get very little in return.
Yeah. So with that being said, if we when we're talking about our budget for the upcoming year, well, I guess I was gonna say maybe we should incorporate some of this additional funding if we're gonna need to do surveys and such. But actually, those would all be taking place in the current fiscal year. And so our budget might be short this year if we are being asked to send out surveys, or maybe the select board could send out surveys on our behalf.
Well, I know we might have some money left over because all of my schooling was canceled. You know, so there's like maybe $700 at least right there that I didn't go to, you know, assessor school last year. So we might have money in there to cover mailing of a survey. I can double check.
Well, I mean, I guess I know that this is kind of Patrick's bailiwick, so he's pretty good at figuring out, you know, how to do the technical piece of a short survey, perhaps that would get us to some kind of a
Yeah. So that's the
jumping off point, I guess.
So just to circle back, I think it would be great if we could provide a multi-page, a 2-page bullet item. This is what we're talking about. This is how it's handled in other areas. I think that would be the first step. And ultimately, I think the second step might be some type of survey. And then the third would be some type of presentation or some type of question on town flow. You know, it might be an informal vote. It might be a formal vote, but we can see after the survey.
Right.
So
I
in
think
terms of the bulleted questionnaire and just general discussion.
You're breaking up, Tom.
What's the percentage of how significant would this resident be? What percentage would it be? Do you know?
You mean,
I
it can go up to, I believe, 20%.
No,
might-
35.
It might be higher than that.
Well,
We could go
Yeah.
anywhere from 0 to 35%.
35, right? It got changed.
so I
So
mean,
Okay.
we could go just 7%. You know, we could go 15%. Really, there's many variables here, but you know, and anybody who wants to understand the math offline, I'd be happy to walk you through it.
I think it has to be delivered to us, you know, all the variables. This is the bottom line. This is the top line based on the average assessment. And I think that's all, you know, part of the educational process that we need to provide the townspeople.
But the variables that they're based on facts and not sort of policy decisions are the number and amount, the number of of residences that are occupied, by, not just owned by folks who live in this town, but who live in those domiciles versus the number of parcels that aren't. Because that's going to determine what the math works out to. Those are the variables that are fixed and out of our control in terms of, we can set the rate, we can set the percentage of the discount, but all of those are determined by kind of,
Right.
the first two things.
Yeah. I would
Yeah, you
also
have
say
to-
that,
You have to nail that number down and know, a pretty close what it's going to be, because when it comes to the billing side of it, which has been untested, and that's another part of this, we have to make sure that we know, the system would have to literally know how many, and it would have to be done manually, are getting, let's say $100,000 off of their assessment. So the only way to do that, when you do the calculation for the state, the amount that actual amount that's coming off of each one, the very first step is how many eligible parcels are there. And again, let's say we did go through with this and we're at the billing part of it, what we'd have to make sure is if we say there's 700, that are being considered, that when we are done with everything, it matches 700, because if it doesn't, we no longer match our commitment to what has been approved at the state, and we cannot send out tax bills if that is off by, $1. So that's, my concern is always the tail end of it as well, with making sure that, yes, we can implement this, we can get this done. And that would mean talking to our treasurer and tax collector and making sure that they're on board with because we don't print the bills, they print the bills, and make sure that can actually be implemented. And that part scares me, because again, there's not a lot of communities that handle this. And I'm hoping that a few of the communities that I talk to actually have soft rate. So that would make it so much easier. They can tell us exactly how it's done. If not, again, it's our responsibility to make sure that soft rate can do this.
So I have another question, which is how do rental properties factor into this?
They don't receive it. It has to be, you have to be living in that property. It cannot be a rental property. It cannot be a commercial or industrial property.
which is another,
So
I think that we've got some untapped resources. Go ahead, Tom.
Just if I could follow up on that, can people hear me now?
Yeah.
Yep.
Just in terms of being equitable and fair to people who are in the lower sectors of income and have to pay a disproportional percentage of their income on taxes, it seems to me a number of people in this category rent their property. And if the landlords of rental property don't get compensated, this in turn is a greater expense rather than a lesser expense for rental properties.
But somebody who rented out a room in their house on Airbnb would still qualify. They live in the house. If someone owns 3 properties and they only live in one, only one of the 3 would qualify.
Yeah. And what
And
Tom,
again, that adds to the technical side of it.
right. So Tom's point is that basically, let's say I own my primary house and I own a rental building with 6 properties. So Tom's point is that basically I'm going to get my exemption on my primary house, but my rental property will not get the exemption. Therefore, I will be forced to pass along that cost to my 6 tenants who will have to pay more tax. That was Tom's point, I believe.
But
Exactly. Thank you, Doug.
But
Exactly my point.
okay, so even at the maximum, which I'm not advocating, at the maximum, let's say it's $175,000 exemption, and let's, for the simplified math, say it's $10 a thousand, you're looking at a $1,750 savings on the first house. And then how much would the second house go up if the rate had to go up a couple of points? It might not even go up $1,750. Remember, you still have savings on the first house. So, if someone owns 5 properties, they would probably pay more. Someone with 2 properties would not necessarily pay more, and in fact, would probably still save.
Well, it all comes down to, the tail end when we're close to figuring out the tax rate. to see with this type of shift, you know, for every 100,000 that's coming off of the residential side, it's being made up in the tax rate. So again, it's hard to figure it out right now because we don't know what the tax base is going to be, and probably until the summertime. So again, you know, you're not losing anything in your tax base. You're just shifting it around. But what it will do is, you know, the repercussion of this is the fact that everyone's tax rate will go up beyond where it was supposed to be to begin with. So,
Right.
you know, that has to be explained if we're going to do a survey of any kind, that, you know, this isn't just we're going to take $100,000 off and you're going to be okay. Your tax rate is going to be above the norm of what it would normally be. That definitely has to be thrown out there.
I totally agree, and that's a very important point. Thank you, Mike.
So can I just talk about the mechanics a little bit of this gathering information? Michael, you mentioned that we're with SoftWrite, and you were concerned about SoftWrite's ability to process the actual tax bills.
Well, no, not process the bills. What's going to happen is there's no mechanism in place with any kind of billing system where it will automatically determine which properties are getting the exemption. We are going to have to sit in front of a terminal and actually type in or send a list to them every single taxpayer that's eligible, and it's going to have to be done manually. Because of the circumstances of this town where there could be rentals, there's commercial, industrial.
Oh.
It's a matter of sitting there. And again, it's not a big deal. The data entry part is my least concern. I just want to make sure that once those are all entered, there's a balancing issue. So we know that 700 of them got it and the rest of them didn't.
Right.
So my point is that if we're going to be reaching out to municipalities out in the Cape and Islands, I'm assuming some of them must use SoftWrite. So therefore, if
they're one of the biggest.
If you're picking certain towns to work with, you might want to reach out to SoftWrite first and say, who do you deal with out in the Cape and Islands? And hopefully they will share 10 names, and it might be easier to choose from those 10 names versus going to somebody you know, that's similar software. So that's all I'm saying. So might reach out to SoftWrite first to pick our towns to reach out to.
I mean, they might even tell us that they implement it on the valuation side of it. We've never done this. I mean, we wait until the values are done, and if there's an abatement or an exemption, that's adjusted through the tax collector's office. But you know, there's a probability that they could come back and say, well, the assessors generate that list and they actually deduct it from the valuation. Although I don't technically think that's possible, because I believe that the initial value, if you've got $1 million home, that is the committed value. The amount that comes off of it is kind of like getting an exemption or an abatement. I don't think we can mess around with what those original valuations are minus $100,000. You know, you can't do that. We're committing the original amount. So I highly doubt they're going to tell me that. But I just want to know the procedure of, okay, what do you do once you know that you're going forward with the residential exemption? How do you actually sit there in front of your computer with SoftWrite and make sure you're telling that billing system that here are 600 or 700 accounts that are getting $100,000 taken off, and how are you matching that up with your recap sheet to make sure you're generating the exact amount of tax dollars that you need to run the town? That's my concern, and that's something that is easily, like Doug said, I'll check that out beforehand, so we're not doing a runaround on seeing what system can handle this type of situation with a residential exemption. Definitely.
I just have one final comment that I'd like to make. Can everyone hear me now? Okay.
Yep.
Yeah.
So I think basing the argument on we're helping out working families who can't afford to be in Stockbridge hits on a very emotional level. I think it's certainly a very worthy cause, and I applaud Patrick for being concerned about this. But my concern is you pass this residential exemption on the assumption that this is really going to help the working people in Stockbridge who can't afford it. And it ends up helping the working people minimally. And it ends up, everybody's tax rate goes up. And I'm just not sure that the numbers are really going to support the objective that much. And I think the messaging becomes very important and could be, frankly, misleading.
All right, well, and I don't want to, I don't know that this is I think that town meeting is the eventual forum to have this discussion if we decide we want to have it. But let me give you an example, Tom. Okay, let's say in the bottom quartile of homes in Stockbridge, let's say the valuation is around $300,000. Okay, at a maximum exemption of 175 of 35%.
I'm sorry, I'm having a little bit of trouble with that number. That seems rather high for the bottom quartile, 300K.
The average assessment, the average residential exemption or tax amount or tax value is calculated fiscal 21 at 497,000.
But what's the bottom 25% of homes? What's the top valuation at 25%?
I don't know the exact number.
All right, well, I've actually got a spreadsheet of every home in Stockbridge. It's about $300,000. Okay, so order magnitude. So if you were to do an exemption of 35%, and I'm not saying that that's what we should do, but if you did that, that home would see a reduction of approximately 170,000, let's say, in assessment value. So a $300,000 house goes down to an assessed value of 130,000. The tax rate to offset that would have to go up by about 8 to 10%. All right.
Well, you can't also, there's a ruling that it can't be below 10% of their market value.
No, I'm saying that the tax rate, if it's 950 now,
the tax rate. Okay.
All right. So my point is that at 1050 rate, taxes of 130,000 is a whole lot less than a 950 rate at taxes of 300,000. Now, when we're talking about trying to get, what I'm thinking about is that whole corridor of homes along Route 90, many homes in Glendale, many homes on 102, those homes that are not necessarily attractive to second homeowners, but are very attractive to Airbnbers, we can help give a couple $100 a year, a month rather, in savings on a mortgage, which typically includes the taxes, if we take the taxes of those homes and we reduce them. And it's so modest in terms of, because I'm not suggesting that we go all the way to 35%. We could have a significant impact on the affordability of those homes and getting the next generation of ownership to be residents, if we make it so that folks can just afford them a little bit more. That's why we're talking about down payment assistance with Jay. Jay Bukowski's proposal he made to CPC last week. You add all these things up together, and on the margin, maybe in 10 years, we can have an impact on 100 residences, rather, 100 more residences that we would otherwise have. We lost 400. Michael, if your number of 600 is right, in the 2010 census, we had 1,013 residential homes in this town. If you tell me we're down to 600 now, I don't know what the right answers are, but this is a problem. If in 10 years we lost 400 residences in this town, I want to make sure this is still a town in 10 or 20 years. And I do not know what the right answers are, but I want to be asking the questions for how we have a town, for the long term, because this is not a trend line that is, if anybody isn't terrified of this trend line, I think that they aren't paying attention.
Yeah, but let me just say though, I've been here for 26 years and that percentage basically has been the same ever since I've started here. So, if we lose some second homes because people have made this their permanent residence, we come out on the tail end with more people that are still second.
Absolutely. If people move here, I don't care why they're moving here. I just want them to move here. I want a community 12 months a year. not every house, but just enough houses so that we can have a volunteer fire department and we can fill our boards and that we can be a town with a community in it.
So Patrick, I totally, as I said before, agree with your concerns and trying to help families have affordable housing. I'm 100% behind that. But what troubles me is your sort of emotional pitch here that's talking about the terrifying trend line here, when in fact I'm just concerned that an emotional pitch is going to go to a policy that doesn't necessarily meet the objective that we have. The objective is fine, it's the approach.
Okay,
And by
I'll
using emotionally laden language to get this objective, I think it's problematic, when in fact it may do relatively little. And I know the numbers that you're throwing around here, but you know, when you factor in rental properties and many other factors, I'm not convinced that this is the right way to go. And I think the argument should be based on fact rather than terms like terrifying trends and this kind of thing. When Michael has just said the trend has not changed that much in the last 25 years.
Well, I mean, maybe it's apples to oranges, Michael. You know, the 2010 census we had said we had 1,013 out of 1,700 primary residences here. Is that not the same as the residences that you're saying are now 600?
I'm not saying, you know, the last time that I did, and again, this is strictly based on, my numbers are based on the personal property accounts that we've picked up for second homeowners. It is not the same number that Terry would have for the census or for voting. This is just for the ones that we're picking up that we feel are second homeowners, because when their deed came through, it showed that they their tax bills being sent to a different location. So again, a lot of those have actually created PO boxes. And again, we don't know. I think it's a small percentage, definitely less than 10%, that might be in a different category where they have a PO box, but they haven't actually sold their residence in another community. But as far, when I run this report year after year after year, as far as what we're picking up on personal property, it does not change that much. It's always around the same amount. I think right now we have, we're charging around 650 second homeowners with a personal property bill. So that has not changed that much in all the years that I've been here. And
that doesn't mean that the disconnect I'm having, and I honestly want the answer to this, because of course I think this should drive policy, is 2010 census, 1,013 primary residences. And you said at the October tax classification hearing that you thought we were down to 600. And
no, that's an estimate. I use around an estimate when we're coming up with a residential exemption. I don't know what, again, it's based on what we're charging for personal property. There could be renters out there that haven't even told us that they shouldn't be paying a personal property bill. On occasion, we'll get a few of them where they'll file an abatement each year and say, why did I get this bill? I actually rent this property. I'm like, okay, we'll take you off of our records. People have to understand that our total number of, we are not the end all when it comes to how many second homes we have, because our method is used strictly for picking up personal property bills to base a tax amount on their furnishings that they get taxed for according to Mass General Law. I make that very clear when I'm talking to people, when I'm running these reports. This is an estimate. These are who we are taxing for a personal property bill. We are not the final say. The residential exemption almost forces us to be the final say in how many second homeowners there are. And like Doug said, there are so many intricacies with determining what is a second homeowner. So again, I don't know what reports you have. I'm just basing my number from this office just on, if you were to run a report that said, give me all the personal property accounts that are getting billed for a second home, it right now would say 648. That's
So
what the total would be.
Is it 648 just residential, or is that residential and some commercial?
No,
Six-
that's just residential.
Okay,
There's no, the commercial, that it's
Okay.
it's called a 501. That's the personal property code. And actually what I do is in the system, I flag it and I put second home in parentheses. So I do an equation, I do a macro that says, give me a report of everything that is in the note section that says second home. I've got ones that say business, I have ones that say livestock, I have ones that say utilities. So I can go in and a lot of people ask for that report. And I make sure that in the email, when I attach it, I always say, please note, this is not the definitive number because we don't know of all the rentals. That's why I'm saying the residential exemption, there's a lot of homework as far as trying to come up with that, what Patrick is asking for, that final number. That number is never going to be exact. I mean, it's never going to be exact because if the bills go out and neighbors start talking to neighbors, they may come in with an abatement application and say, look, why didn't I get this? I live here. Well, I'll say, well, your address says that you live elsewhere. And they could say, well, that's the address of the trustee, or that's just where I want my tax bill to go. Plus, what about the ones that have their tax bill sent to a bank or a mortgage company? How do we know about those? We don't, that's not an exact science. There is no exact science with coming up with that number. That's why I'm concerned. What is the process that other communities
But
use?
Michael, I don't want to, certainly I didn't vote for this last year, in October. I'm not sure that this is a good idea this year. I honestly just want to do what's best for the town. And I don't come in with a preconceived notion. Yeah, I don't come in with a preconceived notion that this is the right way to go, but it's important to have good facts, to Tom's point. And the fact is that what you're saying is that maybe we don't have a handle on whether we really lost 400 homes that were residences 10 years ago, like the census says, because maybe it's apples and oranges. But you can see from my perspective, a lot of these details don't impact the sort of top line kind of, like,
Well, again,
we need to know this information because it should be driving policy is all I'm saying.
The census is based on, how many people, that's coming through on how many people in a household. My numbers are strictly how many parcels we have.
No, the census talks about parcels too.
Well,
Okay, but
the problem is that our data is also subject to adverse, since it involves money, the facts may be change. So all I'm saying, and it's also it's hard enough to get this information, to get it accurate when we're talking about personal property, which represents a very small portion of everybody's taxes. And just imagine the devil in details when it affects if there is an evaluation or a significant difference. This is going to be, it's going to be very critical to have it accurate because everybody's going to get very upset, and it's going to be a bugger for a number of years.
Because believe me, I would love to not be to hear Tom's criticism. It's great to not be terrified. So if we don't have this problem with the trend line really impacting residences in a negative way at a very quick pace, then that calls into question many assumptions that you could come about what the best way to tackle these issues are if there's no issue to begin with. So all I ask is that we go through a process to try to get good information so that we can then have policies that reflect what our options are to address those trends, if there are trends. I don't know what the answers are because I don't know what the facts are yet.
And thank you, Patrick. And I don't mean to be redundant, but it's all a matter of expenses and income. And to base the need to do this on huge capital expenses that I frankly think would be a mistake, namely dredging and expanding the sewer. I think there are better ways of handling both problems.
Well,
That's
that may be, Tom, but the town has spent 15 years.
Just to put it out there as a given that these are essential capital expenditures, I would have a strong issue with.
I agree. It's certainly not my place to say that, but then again, the town spent over the last 15 years, we spent $500,000 with GZA on dredging. And if it's the town's opinion that we should abandon the dredging strategy, I'm all ears, but I'm going by what previous town meetings have supported. The same way that the town outlined 10 areas of potential
Well, the
sewers.
Stockbridge Bowl Association propaganda that the bowl is dying is ridiculous. You know, the outlet has been cluttered with weeds and
Yeah.
lily pond for 70 years.
If the
Sorry.
town's policy is no longer to support dredging, that's reasonable, but that should be decided at town meeting too.
Well, I mean, I think we've wandered back
Exactly.
into an area that is really not in our
We have.
purview per se. So I would
apologize,
suggest that
it's right, but
we just go back to what I think we said we were going to do, which is that Mike will reach out to our software company, and then maybe we'll talk with a few of the towns, and just let's get a sense of what we're looking at and how complicated it is. And I think I would just end with, in my case, when we're talking about avenues for income, I know that the Airbnb, I don't think we ever, or the select board never voted to take the full amount that they could take at the when they approved it. And I would suggest that you folks look at that. And I think also didn't
Definitely.
vote to take the full impact of the meals and occupancy tax for the hotels. And so if you're looking for money, there's money to be found. It's just that, like anything else, these folks, I'll say the hotels and motels are probably having a tough time, but I would suggest that Airbnb does not. And I know there's a community impact fund, I think, for that too, which is, something that we haven't done either. So I mean, there is some more avenues, and if anybody's concerned about Airbnb, then I think that, if the appetite is to tax them to the fullest amount, then let's do that.
I couldn't agree more.
Yeah.
All right. Let's just
So-
recap. So Michael, just to recap, Gary, you directed Michael in the office to research, and
Yeah.
does it need to be done in motion, or are we going to we don't need to put it in a formal motion?
No, I mean, I don't think it's just it's part of a discussion. So, and Mike said he would do it. So I think we'll
Right.
just
Yep,
go
I
forward
will.
with that at this point.
I will talk to the software companies and they can give me a list. And I also have a list already of some of the communities that have it. So I'll reach out to them and now that I'm on the Berkshire County Assessors Association, I can also
Good point.
reach out to my fellow assessors, and because I know at least one of them, Chris Lamar in Williamstown, he was the assessor in Great Barrington, and they went through quite a bit of research. I've been told by their clerk that they have, a folder that's like 2 inches thick, and I guarantee he probably reached out. He's very thorough to a lot of communities, and we're good friends, so I can also pick his brain a little bit.
Yeah, he would be a great resource.
Yep, absolutely. I will do that.
Okay. You have anything else, Mike? Other than we have to sign some stuff, right?
Well, number 10, I kind of messed up because I didn't realize that, well, let's just put it this way. With Zoom, things are a little different. But I planned on going, for us going into executive session to start reviewing the real and personal abatements. But at our staff meeting, Mike brought up some issues because he says, as far as how we're going to handle these, and he thought that initially they were to be done in open session. And I called the state. I talked to Jim Crowley, that they had the attorney of the day. And he called me back on Friday and said, by no means are we to discuss abatements in open session. You have to go into executive session. And we can do that like we did Steve had said we could go into a separate room. That's
Right.
perfectly acceptable. But what I have to start doing, and I didn't realize it, so legally we can't do it today, is when I put the Board of Assessors to review the personal and real abatement applications, I have to quote the general law that says we will be going into executive session, and it's chapter, I've got the whole thing written down. So Mike's going to show me how to do that. So today we'll nix the idea of doing abatements, and at our next meeting, we should just do all of them. I've got them all ready to go.
Okay.
And I think we can get through them, and they're pretty quick if we, there's 20 of them. So it's not a lot. It's the least amount we've had in years. So we can do, there's no need to come in here to do them, because if we do that, we're still going to have a Zoom meeting. We're still going to have to go into executive session. So we might as well try doing it in a chat group, private chat group. But what we have to do is we have to note it on the agenda. Once we go into executive session, we review everything. You guys make the decision or continue it to the next meeting. Then we have to go back into general session and close out the meeting. So right now, the way I've got the agenda set up, all I can say is what I just did. We have to wait until he'll show me the exact quote. I'll put it in the agenda for next time, and we're still good. We've got until mid-February to do this. I think we can wrap it up in our next meeting. If not, would you guys be okay with setting up another meeting? Like maybe the first, but we could probably just figure it out and do it the first February meeting as well. 10 and 10, we could do 10, or we could try getting through as many of them as we can. I think, is it the 25th, Tammy, the next meeting?
Of this month?
Yeah. So the next meeting would be the 25th. So are you guys okay if I word it correctly and we go into executive session on the 25th?
Sure.
We probably won't have as many items, so we could get right into it. I didn't realize that the residential exemption committee thing would go for so long, but that's fine. So if that's what you want, we will continue the abatement review until the 25th, and hopefully be done with them all in one meeting.
Mike, if we need to see certain things, are you set up to do screen share and all that?
I'll figure it out. Yeah, I can do that. I mean, what I could actually do, if you want me to, I can scan in the record cards for all the properties in question and get those to you guys before the meeting.
Well, so what
And
we
if
should do,
it's a land issue, I can send the map too.
so can we get three packets prepared before we sign the paperwork we need to sign? And that way, when we come in to sign from this meeting, we can pick up some type of packet? So, you know what I'm saying?
Oh, yeah. I mean, that's fine too.
Right. So if you can throw together three packets, we will pick up the packets and sign this week's paperwork as soon as the three packets are ready.
Oh, okay. Yeah, let me do that. What do you want in the packet? You want the record card, the map?
The abatement
Okay.
application, abatement application.
Okay, that's good. And what I'll do is I'll also put my cover sheet where I either say, recommend, denial, or,
Mhm.
I mean, they're pretty short, and there are a lot of repeat ones from last time. And there's some real simple ones in there. Personal property, there's maybe 2 or 3 where we shouldn't have taxed them. Again, either a second home, or one's a solar company that I picked up that I shouldn't have. So, I mean, they're not bad. I mean, I think some of them are so out there that you're just going to be like, come on, really? I mean, I think I may have told you, I won't mention today, but you'll see in the packet, and you can go from there. But yeah, okay, I'll do that. That's fine.
Yeah, because that'll save a lot of time.
I would recommend, though, when you guys are done, that you give us all that stuff back so I can shred it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. All
And
right.
so-
I was going to mention that too.
So how long do you need to get this paperwork in order, and when do you
How
want?
about, I'd say maybe Wednesday or Thursday. Yeah, that I can, because it's a lot. I mean, I want to print the maps out and everything. There's only one or two that are actually land issues. The rest of them are just, the majority of them are, I bought this property in 2020. This is what I paid. And again, the rule is typically if you're after the assessment date, we don't normally consider it, but you guys can look into that and, you know, do what you have to do and make decision based on other things. But yeah, so I'll have the record card. If there's comp cards that need to be included, I'll include those, or at least I'll put a list of the map and lot numbers if you have to go online and look. But generally, for example, you know, there might be one property that has like, you know, many record cards. I'll print those out, but really it's the cover sheet, the first record card that has the total value that you should be okay with. But yeah, how about like Wednesday? I would say if I can't get it done on Wednesday, definitely Thursday morning. I have to bring my car in on Wednesday, but Tammy will be here.
Shooting
So
for
why don't you just let us know, Mike? I don't want to put too much, you know, whatever works best for you, but maybe if you happen to have it ready Wednesday, let us know, but otherwise we'll be ready Thursday. Does that make
That's
sense?
fine. Yes. Yeah, it won't take me that long. We'll get it done.
All right.
Okay. And Tom, I did put the tax exemption pilot on there, but I don't know if there's anything on that.
There's no update
Okay.
today, so, but
All right.
I think you can continue to list it because there will be updates.
Okay. Anything else?
I'm all set.
No. It's a long meeting, longer than I thought it was going to be.
It's all good.
Yep.
Okay.
Also, our new tax collector treasurer starts today.
And who was that?
What's her last name?
Olson.
Erica Olson.
And where was she previously?
Florida, right?
Clarksburg, I believe.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
She was doing 2 towns, I think.
Florida Mountain.
Florida and Clarksburg, maybe?
Yep.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Yep. So she's here today, so I'm eager to meet her.
Okay.
All right, guys. I will.
Hey, Mike,
Yep.
just before we leave, could you just have Tammy let me know, because since this person is new, we need to bring her into the loop for the elderly
Uh-oh.
meeting that we're going to probably do in March.
Oh my, no, I can't. Is that, Gary, can you say that again?
The elderly meeting that we convene in March for the people apply for the grants.
Oh, the aid for the elderly?
Yeah,
Okay.
she's gonna need to be a part of that.
Yep. Did you set up a meeting yet for that?
No,
Okay. All right. Yep, she knows that.
okay,
All right. Okay, guys, I will email you as soon as that stuff's ready.
all righty. Thank
Okay.
you.
Okay.
Happy New
Thanks
Year.
all. Yeah.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
All right. Take care.